In this video, we're going to take a closer look at the Revoslot Porsche 911 GT2. Welcome to Garage Sport, where we love slot car racing and help you become an expert. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you get notified of every video that we put out. There's a line of cars that we've got waiting to review with a new video released every Thursday. We've already taken a look at the Scalatrix McLaren F1 GTR. If you haven't seen that, check out the card at the top of the screen to watch that. We picked up this Revoslot Porsche 911 GT2 for free. It was a gift from the guys I race with, which is just fantastic. Normally these cars retail at my local slot car shop for $114.95 Australian dollars, or dollary doos as we call them. That's within a few dollars of what my research suggests you'll be able to pick one of these up for. But as always, I'd encourage you to spend your money with your local purveyor of slot car goods. A few dollars out of your pocket won't make much difference to you, but it'll make a world of difference to them. Now, more than $100 dues on a slot car is a lot of money, but there's a lot of slot car here. Well, there's the same amount of slot car you'd normally get, but it's been really well put together. We'll get onto that shortly. First, let's understand why Revoslot decided to make this particular car. The 993, Porsche's model names are not in the slightest bit confusing. This 911, the 993, was produced during the mid-1990s with the GT2 version built for, well, GT2 racing. It was the first Porsche to carry that badge, and it was one of the last out of Weissach to have the air-cooled motor. Being a GT2 car and built for racing, there are a few go-faster bits. Wider wheel arches, bigger air intakes, that flat six motor, which, depending when you bought the car, made either 424 or 444 brake horsepower. Suspension came from the Cup car, and all up it weighed about 200 kilograms less than the road-going 993 Turbo. This car raced in endurance racing around the same time as McLaren F1, but in the category below, in the class below. Back in the day, one of these would set you back a cool 270,000 Deutschmark, 170-odd thousand US dollars. That's a lot of money, but given that one of these sold in 2018 for 2.4 million, kind of cheap. There is no mistaking that this car is a Porsche 911. It has the trademark headlights and the flared bonnet design and the sleek rear end, in this instance with a set of shelves attached. You can see the widened wheel arches and air intakes, while all around the car there's evidence of the racing pedigree, especially the logos. This one's sponsored by Apple, in case you hadn't noticed. The quality of the finish is excellent, and despite the intricacy in some of the detail, nothing has fallen off so far. It's not perfect. There have been a few simplifications made to make this a hardy, raceable slot car, but they're comparatively minor. The wing mirrors, for instance, aren't quite the right shape. Other details, though, are period correct and accurate. The wheels, for instance, are simply glorious, and thus far all four inserts have managed to stay in place, which is something of an achievement, you'll have to agree. The interior is simple, but that's all it needs to be. You know, the slot car, it's not a static model, so the only time you really see it is when you're picking the thing up off its roof. Even still, it's got the driver in there, the fire extinguisher. There's a little bit of detail, but it's just enough. The aesthetics, though, are limited to the body. There's no underfloor diffusers or anything that's been incorporated into Revoslot's traditional aluminium chassis. It holds the body on with four screws, which go into the molded pillars in the body with rubber covers, not to sort of absorb the vibrations, I guess. Perhaps it offers a more reliable way of getting some body float, but given this is a two-piece chassis, I'd fix the body on normally and then back off the motor pod to have that float. Underneath, you can also see the adjustability built into where the motor screws in. You can tweak that to get whatever gearing you might want to use, or even just tweak the mesh on the gears a little bit. This is a Revoslot, so no magnets, and in comparison to a consumer-level slot car like a Scalatrix, it's pretty heavy. Despite that, it's only got a 21,000 RPM. It's got a brass pinion on that. The rear axle is metal. All four wheels are aluminium, and they've got grub screws to hold them in place. One trick I found with this style of wheel is to grind a small flat section onto the axle for the grub screw to grip onto. Else you can easily over-tighten and strip the head of the grub, which will make you sad. The wheels are your typical Revoslot style, so you've got the wider rubber style insert depression thing, not the notch style brand that other brands use, and if I'm honest, I like Revoslot's approach more. The axles are held in place with anodized aluminium brackets screwed into the chassis, much the same as the motor is. There are 4 brass nuts that you can adjust to if you're looking for a bit of body flow, which is where I'd adjust rather than loosen the body off, as I said before. The guide is 7mm deep and sprung, which is fantastic. In my experience, the 7mm guide is fine for both plastic and wooden tracks, but there is a deeper 9mm guide available, especially for routed tracks. I've not bothered to fit one of those. There's little to really pick at with this car. It's been beautifully put together by Revoslot with quality components, but then you're paying a premium for them, so we should expect it to be a step above Scalextric or Carrera. But it's not perfect. The car had binding issues with the rear wheels on the arches when I took this one out of the box, and that took a little bit of time to sort out. And the thing's noisy, like really noisy. No matter how well you get it meshing, it's an angle winder setup, so it's always going to be a little bit noisier than an inline or a sidewinder. I like an angle winder, so that's something that I'll live with. Plus, racing cars are meant to be noisy, right? There's nothing really out in the market competing with this particular car, but it's unlikely that someone is going to go specifically looking for the Porsche 911 993 GT2 and instead just go looking for a Porsche. Scalextric has an old style RSR for well under the price of this one, but that is a consumer level car versus the enthusiast spec that the Revoslot is. Scale Auto has the 991 RSR, which is a bit cheaper, but in my experience, less sophisticated and less well produced compared to the Revoslot. They come with plastic front wheels and plastic chassis and a few other bits and pieces to keep costs down. Much of that can be said about Slotted 2, though there are no direct 911 comparisons. There are Alfa Romeo DTMs and Nissan Group A cars from around the same era. They've got motor pods, and I highly rate Slotted stuff, but I still prefer Revoslot. And that brings me on to NSR, which doesn't have this car, but it does have the 997 from 2011. Now, those cars are very quick, and while they're built to a slightly different philosophy to the Revoslots, they produce as good, if not better, performance in my experience. They're also about the same price, which leaves you really with the tricky decision, which one or both? To help make that decision, let's get this car on track and see how it performs. Here we go then, Porsche 911 GT2 from Revoslot. 5 laps around this 3-lane wooden track. We are off. No magnets in this car. Look for the back end to get skaty, as you saw there. Lost a bit of time on the exit of the hairpin. First lap under our belts. A solid start, still struggling for back end. The track clearly slippery. This Revoslot Porsche is a race winner around this track. Won an endurance race not so long ago. It's race proven. Very, very fast. It does seem more composed this time around. A little bit of the back end skating away from it there through the kink. Not too far to go now. Across the line to complete another lap. So there we go. 5.359s around our track. That's hugely impressive because it's more than half a second quicker than the McLaren F1 GTR from Scalextric. And that car has magnets. This thing is race run. I've driven it competitively and won, and I do tend to drive non-magnet cars more. Even still, that difference is significant, and it's a time that will take some beating. So based on that evidence, I'd absolutely recommend picking up a Revoslot Porsche 911 GT2. I was lucky enough to be given this one, and I can honestly say it's one of the favorite cars in my collection. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Look forward to engaging with you there. Until the next one, happy racing.